Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bookercast, the podcast where books come to life.
And I'm so excited to dive into another amazing story with all of you.
Whether you're a bookworm or just love a good story, this is the place for you.
Every episode, we explore incredible books, talk about their stories and characters, and share insights that'll make you fall in love with reading all over again.
All right, let's not keep you waiting any longer. Get comfortable, and let's jump right into it.
Sounds good.
Welcome to our deep dive into The Future of the Mind by Michio Kaku.
Yeah.
We're going to be exploring some pretty mind-blowing ideas about the potential of the human brain.
Yeah.
You might know Kaku as the guy who can make even the most complex scientific concepts sound exciting.
Yeah, he's a great writer.
And trust me, this book does not disappoint.
No.
We're talking telepathy, mind control,
Right.
even transferring consciousness into machines.
Wow.
So are these just sci-fi fantasies?
Right?
Or could there be some real science behind them?
Yeah.
That's what we're here to uncover.
Okay.
Drawing from the book itself, plus some fascinating insights from Kaku's acknowledgments, where he talks about his research process.
It's like getting a sneak peek into the mind of a brilliant physicist who also happens to be a huge sci-fi fan.
Right, and that blend of science and imagination is what makes this book so captivating.
Absolutely.
Kaku starts by taking us back to his childhood, where his fascination with the mind began. He talks about how science fiction, especially stories about telepathy and mind control, really ignited his imagination. He even mentions being intrigued by a magician called the Amazing Dunninger, who claimed to perform telepathy on TV.
What's interesting is that even as a kid, Kaku wasn't just passively absorbing these ideas.
Right.
He was already tinkering with technology, building a particle accelerator in his mom's garage.
Wow.
It's almost like he was destined to explore the inner workings of the mind.
Talk about a curious mind.
Yeah.
And that curiosity led him to delve into the history of neuroscience, starting with some of the early breakthroughs that really shaped our understanding of the brain.
Right.
He tells the story of Phineas Gage,
Oh, yeah.
the railroad worker who had a metal rod go through his skull and incredibly survived.
This case, as horrifying as it sounds, was a turning point.
Yeah.
It was one of the first to suggest that different parts of the brain might be responsible for specific functions. Before that, we didn't really have a map of the brain or understand how it was organized.
And speaking of maps, Kaku goes on to discuss the work of Broca and Wernicke, who were able to link specific areas of the brain to language and speech.
Yeah.
Then there's Dr. Penfield and his iconic sensory homunculus, that weird-looking figure that shows how much brain power is dedicated to our hands and lips.
It's like the brain's way of saying, hey, we really care about what we touch and taste.
Exactly. But these early discoveries were just the beginning. Kaku then takes us into the modern age of brain exploration with a whole array of brain scanning tools.
Right.
fMRI, EEG, PT scans.
Uh-huh.
They're like windows into the working brain, letting us see what's happening in real time without having to perform surgery.
What's fascinating is the sheer speed of advancement in these fields.
Yeah.
Kaku highlights that we've learned more about the brain in the under 15 years than in the previous 350.
Wow.
He even delves into newer technologies like TES, which uses magnets to temporarily shut down specific parts of the brain.
Hold on, shut down parts of the brain.
Yeah.
What happens then?
Yeah.
Does the person just stop thinking?
It's not quite that simple, but it does allow scientists to study what happens when certain brain areas are offline.
Right.
It's like a controlled experiment where you can isolate specific functions.
That's incredible. But with all this data pouring in from brain scans, how do we make sense of it all?
Right.
How do we define consciousness itself?
That's where Kaku's background as a physicist comes in handy.
Okay.
He approaches the question of consciousness from a unique perspective, using the idea of models and parameters.
Okay.
It's like he's applying the principles of physics to the human mind.
So is he saying there's a formula for consciousness?
Not exactly a formula, but a way to model and understand it.
Okay.
He proposes 3 levels of consciousness based on how complex an organism's ability is to model the world and simulate the future.
Okay.
The first level, which you see in reptiles, is basic awareness of the environment.
What?
The second level, found in mammals, involves social interactions and a wider range of emotions.
Okay.
But it's the third level where things get really interesting.
And that's where we humans come in, right?
Exactly. Level 3 consciousness is all about simulating the future.
Okay.
It's the ability to ask, what if? To plan, strategize, and imagine possibilities.
Right.
That's what separates us from even the smartest animal.
So it's not just about being aware of our surroundings.
Right.
It's about actively shaping them by playing out different futures in our minds.
Exactly.
It's a pretty powerful concept.
It is, and it requires a lot of brain power, particularly from our expanded prefrontal cortex, which has evolved to handle these complex simulations.
Right.
But the big question is, how far can we push this ability?
Yeah.
Could we one day use technology to enhance it or even communicate directly with other minds?
Now, you're talking telepathy. Is that even scientifically plausible?
That's what we'll explore next.
Okay.
And Kaku actually starts by debunking some of the myths around telepathy. He uses the fascinating story of Harry Houdini, the famous escape artist and illusionist, who was obsessed with exposing fraudulent psychic.
Wait, so the master of illusion didn't believe in mind reading?
Yeah.
What does that tell us about the scientific validity of telepathy?
Well, Houdini believed that true magic was in the art of deception.
Right.
Not in violating the laws of nature.
Right.
And Kaku uses this skepticism as a starting point to explain why pure telepathy without any technological assistance is highly unlikely.
So are you saying our brains aren't powerful enough to transmit thoughts directly?
Not in the way it's often portrayed in science fiction.
Okay.
The brain's electromagnetic signals are just too weak to be picked up by another person without some serious amplification.
So does that mean telepathy is completely off the table, or could technology bridge the gap?
That's where things get really exciting. Kaku argues that technology might be the key to unlocking the potential for telepathic communication.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. Tell me more about how technology could make telepathy possible. So how exactly could technology bridge this gap and make telepathy possible?
Kaku dives into some pretty fascinating research happening in neuroscience, starting with the creation of dictionaries of thought using EEG readings.
Okay.
Scientists have been able to identify patterns in brain activity associated with specific thoughts, almost like translating brainwaves into a language computers can understand.
So you're telling me we can already read minds to some extent?
It's more like we're starting to decipher the brain's language, you know?
Right.
Kaku even highlights Dr. Gallant's work at UC Berkeley, where they're actually videotaping people's thoughts using fMRI and complex algorithms.
Wow.
They've been able to reconstruct images that people are seeing or imagining just by analyzing their brain activity.
Videotaping thoughts.
Yeah.
That sounds straight out of science fiction, but it also raises some serious ethical questions.
Absolutely. What happens to privacy in a world where our thoughts can be recorded and potentially shared? These are issues Kaku addresses head-on.
Good.
He even draws a parallel to the debate about DNA evidence in court cases.
Yeah.
Will thoughts one day be admissible as evidence?
That's a pretty unsettling thought.
It is, and as this technology advances, we need to have serious conversations about how to protect our mental privacy.
Right.
And ensure these tools aren't used to violate our basic rights.
So while mind-reading technology might be on the horizon, it comes with a whole set of ethical challenges.
Exactly, but Kaku doesn't just focus on the potential downsides.
Good.
He also explores how these advancements could be used to improve lives, especially in the field of neuroprosthetics.
Okay.
We've already seen how brain-machine interfaces, or BMIs, can allow people to control computers and prosthetic limbs with their thoughts.
Right, those devices that let paralyzed patients communicate and interact with the world using just their minds.
Precisely, and Kaku goes beyond those applications, talking about Dr. Nicholas's work with exoskeletons.
Right.
Imagine a robotic suit you could control with your mind, allowing paralyzed individuals to walk again.
Like something out of Iron Man.
Yeah.
That would be incredible.
Dr. Nicholas is actually aiming to have a quadriplegic Brazilian deliver the opening kick at the 2014 World Cup using this technology.
That's an ambitious goal.
Yeah.
But it shows just how rapidly this field is advancing. But taking this a step further, could we use similar technology to control things beyond our own bodies?
Kaku explores that concept as well, talking about the potential for using surrogates for space exploration.
Okay.
Imagine sending robotic avatars controlled by astronauts back on Earth to explore other planets without risking human lives.
It's like that movie Surrogates, but for scientific discovery.
Right.
Are there any real-world applications for this kind of technology here on Earth?
Kaku points out that it could revolutionize how we approach dangerous jobs.
Right.
Think deep-sea rescue working in hazardous environments or even disaster relief.
Uh-huh.
We could send robotic surrogates controlled remotely to perform tasks too risky for humans.
It's fascinating to think about the possibilities, but what about the implications for consciousness itself?
Right.
If our minds can control external bodies, does that mean consciousness can exist independent of our physical forms?
That's the big question Kaku tackles in the later chapters.
Okay.
He even speculates about the potential for transferring consciousness into machines, essentially achieving a form of immortality.
Immortality in a machine.
Yeah.
That's a big claim. You're telling me Kaku thinks this is scientifically plausible, not just science fiction.
He approaches it from a scientific perspective, looking at what we know about the brain and the rapid advancements in artificial intelligence.
Right.
If consciousness is essentially information processing, as some theories suggest, then could that information be transferred to another medium, like a computer or a robotic body?
That opens up a whole new realm of possibilities, but also some serious ethical dilemmas.
Yeah.
What would it mean to be human if our minds could exist outside of our bodies?
Those are some of the profound questions Kaku raises. He explores the idea of the Connectome Project, where scientists are working to map all the neural connections in the brain.
Okay.
If they succeed, it could pave the way for uploading consciousness into a machine.
It's like creating a digital backup of your mind, but would that backup truly be you?
That's where things get philosophically tricky.
Yeah.
What defines our identity?
Right.
Is it our physical body, our memories, our experiences?
Yeah.
Kaku doesn't provide all the answers, but he challenges us to think deeply about these questions as we venture into this uncharted territory.
So are we on the verge of a future where consciousness can exist beyond the limitations of our physical bodies?
Kaku seems to think it's a real possibility, though it's still far from a certainty.
Okay.
He even discusses the concept of near-death experiences, those accounts of people who have been clinically dead, but revived as potential glimpses into what it might be like for consciousness to exist independent of the body.
Those stories always send shivers down my spine. But how much scientific weight do they actually hold?
Kaku acknowledges that there's skepticism surrounding these accounts.
Right.
And he points out that similar sensations can be induced through things like stimulating the temporal lobes or even fainting.
Okay.
So while near-death experiences might not be definitive proof of consciousness beyond the body, they do raise intriguing questions about the nature of consciousness and its relationship to our physical form.
So while the idea of consciousness existing independently of the body is still largely in the realm of speculation, it's clear that Kaku believes it's a possibility worth exploring.
He even delves into the idea of achieving immortality through technology.
Wow.
While he's skeptical about cryonics, the practice of freezing bodies in hopes of reviving them in the future, he suggests that a more realistic approach might involve creating a digital copy of our consciousness that could exist indefinitely.
A digital afterlife where our minds could live on even after our bodies are gone.
Yeah.
It's both fascinating and a bit unsettling.
It certainly raises a whole host of ethical and philosophical questions about what it means to be human and what the future holds for our species.
Right.
But that's what makes Kaku's book so compelling. He's not just presenting scientific concepts, he's pushing us to think critically about the implications of these advancements and their potential impact on the very nature of human existence.
So what are some of the biggest takeaways from Kaku's exploration of the future of the mind? So as we wrap up our deep dive into the future of the mind, what are some of the biggest takeaways from Kaku's exploration? It seems like he paints a pretty optimistic picture of the future. But are there any concerns we should be thinking about?
Kaku definitely embraces the potential of technology, to enhance our cognitive abilities and even push the boundaries of consciousness itself. But he doesn't shy away from the potential risks either. He raises concerns about artificial intelligence surpassing human intelligence, even becoming self-aware and potentially posing a threat to our existence.
It's like the classic sci-fi trope of robots taking over the world. But is that a realistic scenario or just Hollywood sensationalism?
Kaku acknowledges that it's a possibility, though not necessarily an inevitability. He emphasizes that the future is not predetermined.
Right.
It's up to us to use this technology wisely and ethically to ensure that it benefits humanity rather than harms it.
So it's not just about the science. It's about the responsibility that comes with these advancements. We need to be having these conversations now before this technology becomes so powerful that it's out of our control.
Exactly. Kaku's book is a call to action. It's a reminder that we're on the verge of a technological revolution that will fundamentally change what it means to be human.
Right.
It's a challenge to think deeply about the implications of this technology, to engage in open and honest discussions about the ethical dilemmas it poses, and to work together to shape a future where these advancements truly benefit humanity.
It's a lot to consider, but I think that's what makes this book so important. It's not just about the science. It's about the philosophical and ethical questions that we need to be asking ourselves as we enter this new frontier of the mind.
He challenges us to consider what defines our identity and our humanity in a world where the boundaries between mind and machine, between life and death, are becoming increasingly blurred.
So, as we conclude our deep dive, I'm left with a final thought-provoking question. If we could transfer our consciousness into a machine, would we still be human?
It's a question that Kaku's book doesn't definitively answer, but it's one worth pondering. What would define our identity in such a scenario?
Right.
Would we simply be a copy of our former selves, or would we evolve into something entirely new?
Right.
And what rights and responsibilities would we have as digital beings?
It's mind-boggling to think about. It's like we're on the cusp of a new era of human evolution, one where the mind itself becomes the ultimate frontier.
And as we venture into this uncharted territory, it's crucial that we approach these advancements with both curiosity and caution. We need to be mindful of the potential risks while embracing the possibilities for human progress.
I encourage all of you to explore the future of the mind for yourselves and join this crucial conversation. The future of our minds and perhaps even the future of humanity depends on it. Thanks for diving in with us today.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of BookerCast. We hope you enjoyed diving into it as much as we did. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. Your support means the world, and we can't wait to hear your thoughts on this episode.
Don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, and share this episode with your fellow book lovers. And let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing from you. See you in the next deep dive. Bye for now, and happy reading.